Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. WeatherBrains episode number 867. This is for Monday, the 29th of August. This is James, and the gang is back from NWA. It was a fun show last week, in case you missed it. Most of our folks were at the National Weather Association annual meeting in Pittsburgh. And that was great fun as always, but they're back. We're back. So let's get everything happening here. We got to get the embed code on the TV side, and we've got to get the guests on here, and we'll get this thing started. For those that don't know, this is the pre-show, the WeatherBrains pre-show. This is the magical, marvelous time of the program where we do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and from time to time, we say some really outrageous things. And I actually think I've invited everybody. I need to do that. Every week, I'm going to start inviting people hours before we start. That way they've just got the invitation so they can join us whenever they want to. I don't have to do that. That's cool. I've already done that. So I'm a step ahead here. So every year on this date, I think most people in the weather world think back to 2005. Katrina's landfall, second landfall, was on this date on the Mississippi-Louisiana border there. Day that we will all remember every August 29th. Bill, where were you during the landfall of Hurricane Katrina?
I was on top of the bridge over the Intercoastal Canal in Gulf Shores.
Was Brian Peters down there with you?
He was, and we were broadcasting live because that was as far south as you could go. And I measured 106 mile, well, the anemometer on top of the van measured 106 mile per hour wind gust,
Woo!
which I thought was pretty impressive.
That'll shake and bake that thing.
And so Brian decided we would drive down the Fort Morgan Peninsula, which I didn't think was a very good idea, but it would be kind of fun. And so we start driving along, and there's a narrow point right there, 4 or 5 miles out from Gulf Shores, where the waters are close together, the bay and the Gulf, or the Sound, I guess. And I said, Brian, there's water on the road behind us. And he turned around and looked, and he goes, oh my God. We hightailed it out of there. We'd have been spending the night out on the Fort Morgan, or the rest of the terrible day out on the Fort Morgan Peninsula. But the funny story of all was there's a little restaurant right there, and I can't remember where it is, but it's close to like the zoo and the water place and all that. And
Waterville.
The entrepreneur decided, hey, he would feed all the state troopers and the media people. He said, I got all this hamburger meat and stuff, and I'll just cook for you. And I tell you, it was best food I'd ever eat, because we've been eating potted meat, banana sausages for 2 days. And we were sitting there, and all of a sudden here come these two teenagers on a raft over the flooded tidal water. And the sheriff was eating with us, and or the police chief, whoever it was in Gulf Shores, he decided that he was going to make a big show and arrest them for being out there. They weren't supposed to be out there. We all talked him into clemency for those two teens. They had already had more punishment than anything he could mete out for what they had been through out there all day, because they were completely cut off from the mainland because of the storm surge. So it was an interesting event for sure.
Didn't we have Robert Ricks on this show, Bill?
We did.
Yeah, who wrote that doomsday statement.
You read that to us. We were on the Mississippi coast, and we just talked to Jim Cantori, and we're about to do something there right by the Treasure Island ship, and I thought that was interesting. They weren't saving anything, but they were sure taking out the cash. But you read that to us, and I wrote a blog post right after that, because it was scary, because I wasn't sure they were going to leave. Some of the TV people thought we might stay there, and we were in a Comfort Inn that was maybe 11 feet above sea level, and I was going to be up there on I-10 hitchhiking back to the east if you hadn't intervened and said we were coming back to Mobile.
As I remember, Ricks wrote that statement, and it was released Sunday morning, and landfall was a Monday morning.
That's right. 10, 11 a.m., I think, is the time it went out, something like that.
And the other thing, I remember kind of watching some of the national feeds, and they were talking about New Orleans got away with nothing. The damage isn't bad here. I mean, no problems. Da 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 da. And then,
well, if
that
you remember,
changed
JP in our chat that morning said it looks like he said that, and we were sitting there, and I had just seen that first flash flood warning, and there was a mention in that first flash flood warning about there was a break in the flood wall at one of the places, and I thought that's not good. And the bullet may come later.
Hey, Sean, how you doing? Can you hear us okay?
I do, James. How are things there?
Good to see you, man. Thanks for spending some time with us. We're honored that you're here.
Appreciate the invitation. I was thinking exactly what y'all were thinking about when Katrina made landfall. I was teaching a class at that time, and in the morning I was just telling my students about we're going to get some horrible, horrible reports in a little while. But as y'all said, the initial damage, it wasn't from the wind. That was farther eastward toward Biloxi. And then the flooding all became apparent. And then the catastrophe really started to set in. But I reminded the students that in terms of the wind impacts of Katrina, they were farther east. Not that the Superdome got out unscathed at all. But in terms of the wind damage at the immediate coastline, that was farther east.
And they're still mad in Mississippi that they didn't get any attention because, I think the death toll was 300. The damage was just catastrophic on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And I don't understand journalism, but I can't really blame them because you've got this horrific humanitarian tragedy in New Orleans, and you got to cover that, and you've only got so many resources and so much time to tell these stories, so it's hard. But let me we're not quite there yet. It's 6. We'll start here at the top of the hour. We hit the TV side at 7.
Yeah, thanks for sending that invite early, James. That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna start doing that because it saves me time, and it makes it much easier on me. Ooh, look at James has his TV clothes on.
I noticed that.
The Ron Burgundy look. I'm kind of a big deal. My home smells of rich mahogany, and I have many leather-bound books.
Small children and golden retriever and things like that.
Kirsten, can you hear us okay? Kirsten, are we coming in loud and clear over on your side?
It is. Yes, it is.
Y'all want me to go ahead and do a formal introduction now,
Everybody.
or just kind of let it roll?
Yeah, we'll wait here for just another minute. Sean,
Yeah.
and then
Tulsa
I'll do
people
a short introduction.
representing.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Say what?
The Tulsa people representing.
I know. I was thinking that, Mr. Adelon. You had a happy birthday yesterday, I guess. I hope
I
it was
did.
happy birthday.
I did. My kids wanted me to have an ice cream cake, so I got an ice cream cake.
My favorite kind of birthday cake.
Yep, it is.
All right, Jen, you okay? You going to be able to stay with us?
I hope it's getting pretty dark outside, so it's knocking on my doorstep here. So it's not as severe as it was before, but I think we're okay.
Okay. Well, welcome to our television viewers. We are now at the top of the hour. So therefore, let us hit the record buttons here, and we'll get this thing started on time. And here we go in, let me change one thing here. All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. That's the real Bill Curtis. Wow. Hey, listen, this is WeatherBrains, episode number 867. This is for the 29th of August, 2022. I mean, we can see the first day of meteorological fall coming. I mean, it's like we can almost grasp it here. So the season soon will be changing, but thank you for joining us. I see that all of our folks are back from the NWA annual meeting last week, and it looks like they all survived. James Adelite is all dressed up this evening. James, did everybody behave? And I will say that you are one here with common sense, and you would not do anything crazy. So was everybody up there behaved?
Well, we had to peel Bill away from karaoke a few times, but it wasn't bad. He does a mean Okie from Muskogee.
That's
Wow.
Merle Haggard. You can't beat it.
Did he sing Freebird by Leonard Skinner?
He played along. Yeah.
Play air guitar.
guitar.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
So, James, what's happening in Tulsa?
We had some good afternoon convection come through. Oklahoma City got pounded yesterday. It was our turn today. So we got about a half inch in, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, a little bit of downburst damage northeast of town, but we desperately needed the rain. We get the downburst and rain here, and we're still less than an inch for the month of August. So we need more.
Okay. And we should mention that Rick Smith is not available tonight, had a few little family issues he had to take care of. And of course, Kim is on maternity leave. And we have photos. We need to post those photos up on weatherbrains.com. She sent some photos, and a mom and child and everybody, they're all happy. Any updates from Kim? Have you all heard from her? We got the photograph. So anyway, everything is fine with her, but she'll be away from the show for a bit on maternity leave. So let's go to Jen. Jen, you got some active weather rolling through your territory tonight.
I do up here in Ohio. Things have kind of eased in intensity a little bit, but we're about to get some pretty good rain. It's getting a little bit more gusty, but right now it looks like it'll stay below severe. But yeah, we needed the rain. Again, we had another dry spell, and my helper is here just to let you know that she's giving me an update.
Cat.
Feline
Most people listen. And for those that are listening, we have a cat walking right through Jen's shot. I mean, and we're basically looking at a cat butt right now.
Yes.
So,
so anyway, yes.
Show title.
I think you got your own show title there, you. All good here.
You go.
And I'm offended that you said that with me here. So, I mean, come on.
And we should also mention that Dr. Neil Jacobs is traveling, and he will try to join us for the second half of the show tonight. But I see Troy. Troy, good to see you, man. How you doing?
Doing okay. Just busy last couple of weeks. And I was thinking about what you were saying down here in Austin. We are already starting to get a chill in the air down here with the change of seasons. We only got to 99 today at Camp Mabry. So we're very impressed with that, and looking forward to the days when it'll be snowing and in the 70s, so.
Yeah, break out the jackets and the sweaters.
Yep.
So when does Alabama and Texas play with this early game? When is this?
Week from Saturday.
That's a week from Saturday. So
how did you allow that 11 o'clock start, Troy? What in the
I had
world?
nothing to do with that, but it'll be good news for Austin. The place won't burn probably. So it's just better. It's just 11 o'clock kicks are a little better. It keeps people away from, and it makes the game go a little smoother, we think.
I don't know. I have been to some 11 o'clock kickoffs, and
I know.
I've seen some people drunk as a skunk.
I know. They can do that in college, so.
Those 11 o'clock games get great numbers too.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So anyway, that's I can't believe it's. In fact, I've got my equipment bag here. That big bag right there, that's the Bryant-Denny Stadium equipment bag, the lights and the tripods and all that because we've got I've go in service this Saturday, which is crazy. But enough of this football brains. Bill Murray, let's bring in our guest. I'm excited about this show tonight.
Yeah, James, I am too. Tonight's show is a suggestion, a friend of the podcast, Chris White. I had the pleasure of having lunch last Monday at a real Pittsburgh pizza place, Fiore's, with him and Jeff Frank, who's involved in the Mid-Atlantic Chaser Climb that's coming up in Richmond in November. But we took his suggestion, and based on that, we're pleased to welcome 3/4 of the team from the Across the Sky podcast to the show tonight. It's produced by a fine group of folks from Lee Enterprises, 3 of those which are with us tonight. First, I'll introduce Kirsten Lang, who's a meteorologist for the Tulsa World, keeping the Tulsa colors going there. Kirsten, welcome to the podcast. We can't wait to get into your background and journey and what your thoughts are for the future of meteorology here in just a moment. We're glad you're with us.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
And next we have Joseph Martucci, who's a meteorologist for the Atlantic City Press. And I may not have that exactly right, Joseph, but you can clear me up there. But he covers the weather for South Jersey. You found a need and filled it in your area, and we can't wait to hear about it tonight. I'm glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot. You got it spot on, and you can call me Joe. No need to call me Joseph. That's only for my parents.
That's awesome, and I appreciate you calling us Joe called us the OG of weather podcast, James.
I did.
Oh, wow.
Pleasure to be here today.
That just means we've been here a long time.
Matt Holliner chimed in. He can't be with us tonight. He's covering the weather from Chicago. Of course, they've had some active weather today. We wish we had him here, but he's up there. He does a lot of work for Lee Enterprises. And finally, it's a real pleasure to welcome Sean Sublette to the podcast. He's familiar to many of us from his years at Climate Central. Sean, thank you for setting all this up tonight. How are you doing?
Bill, thanks so much for the invitation, and a big shout out to Chris White. He's been doing wonderful work here, chasing storms across the Mid-Atlantic and here in Virginia. setting up the Chaser Con. Looking forward to that. Couple more months. Normally do that in early November. And we had James there, I think, virtually for the Chaser Con last year. What was that last year, James?
Yeah.
I think it was. It was James ate a lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
ate
I
a lot.
remember James was on the docket. Yeah.
James A. As
Yeah,
her
A.
name
Yeah,
was.
it's really confusing, Sean. We're
Yeah,
having a
it
real
is.
hard time with it. We're going to have to.
James A is the young guy that looks good and he's got the fancy suit on. I'm the old guy with no hair and the crummy clothes here. So
There
that's
you
the
go,
difference.
James with hair. That's what we'll call you,
Yeah,
James.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
And yes, as Jen keyed in there, Tornado is going to be there too.
Yeah, Tornado Talk's going to be there. I'm bringing some of the crew with me. So we're all going to get to have a big meetup down at Mid-Atlantic Chaser Con. So we're excited. We're actually a sponsor for the Chaser Con. So I went to the first one and then haven't been able to get back. So really excited to get down there this year.
And it's a gorgeous facility at the Science Museum of
Mhm.
Virginia in Richmond. It's an old train station. They ran until about 1975. Then it was converted to a science museum a few years after that. And it is just a beautiful facility. I'm from here originally, and I remember going there as a kid in the late 70s, early 80s. And it's come so far, and they've done such a great job preserving the architecture there at the Science Museum of Virginia. So yeah, it's so great to be here. So thanks everybody for setting it up.
Yeah, trains and weather, an outstanding combination. I don't know why those two just seem to go together. That was really fun too, to be in Pittsburgh. We had 2 tracks on both sides of the hotel. It was like my dream come true. I could look out to the left and I could see the CSX. I could look out to the right and I could see the Norfolk Southern and hear those trains rumble by. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, first, and I'll kind of ask you start off, Sean. What is Lee Enterprises? Tell me about this.
All right, I'll put on
organization that you guys are involved with now.
I'll put on my good corporate hat for a moment. Lee Enterprises has 77 digital and print dailies across the United States, several here in the Mid-Atlantic. We have several in the South Central Plains, a few in the Northeast, several in the Midwest and the West. So traditionally, it's more of a newspaper operation, but as many operations have noticed, the change to digital is already here and continuing to grow. So my primary role there, my publication is the Richmond Times-Dispatch, the legacy daily here in Richmond. And I do a couple of videos a day, very short weather videos. And I do a weather column pretty much every day as well. So, it runs 400 or 500 words talking about the daily weather and other little things as needed. Being able to do short weather videos gives me a lot more time to go back and do some bigger research projects and bigger columns and that kind of thing. So I get to do a little video. I get to do a little written word. Since I've come back to Richmond, Mom's excited. She gets to see her boy in the paper. So it's fun. It gives us a lot of creative freedom to do new things, try different things in this kind of venue. So that's what's really exciting. I've only been doing this since November after doing 6 years at Climate Central, 20 years on the air in the Roanoke Lynchburg television market. So it's great. And I'm having just a blast.
So, Joe, it seems like that a lot more newspapers are going to this sort of the Capital Weather Gang style. They seem to have done a really good job putting weather back on the map with newspapers. And you were doing it there in South Jersey, is that right?
Yeah, we were. You guys are the OG of weather podcasts. I think we were the OG of local daily newspapers doing weather. It actually predated me. We did have an NBC affiliate down here in Atlantic City, WMGM. It shut down in 2014. And that's a whole other story. But Dan Skeldon, who's the chief meteorologist there, was hired by the Press of Atlantic City pretty much the day after it closed to provide video updates and work with our print side as well. And it was his work really that spawned a meteorologist in Richmond, where Sean's at now. And then when Dan left in 2017, I hopped in. So I'm coming up on year 5 of this. I started September 2017. I interviewed for this job in Rome, Italy, where I was there with my family and everybody. And made it back, interviewed, and the next day we landed, and the rest was history. And happy to be here. I'm born and raised in New Jersey. I went to school in New Jersey. I've only worked in New Jersey, so I've never left the state of New Jersey. And I'm happy to not pump my own gas and do so here.
Yeah, forget about that. There's self-serve pumps in New Jersey, are they?
I think it's been 2.5 years since I pumped my own gas.
Well, that's pretty cool. So we're coming up here pretty soon. Well, this week is the anniversary of the 1821 hurricane that hit Long Island right across where you are there in New Jersey, sort of like Superstorm Sandy. Just a reminder of, what can happen. It's been what now, 10 years since Superstorm Sandy?
10 years. Yep. And we have a whole number of projects coming out of that. And also, I should say too, 1935 Labor Day hurricane was something that impacted us as well here at the shores. So coming up on Labor Day and that as well.
So you can get some pretty crazy hurricane activity there. Hopefully you won't this year. Maybe we'll get into what everybody thinks about this season that has sort of confounded forecasters to this point. Kirsten, you've got a full set almost there, don't you, that you work from? I think, James, we're about to both James and Troy and Jen, we're going to get real jealous here when we hear about these guys' set up. Kirsten, why don't you tell us about the equipment and platforms you guys work with?
Yeah. So, when we first, or I should say, when I first signed on with Tulsa World, it was actually back in June of 2021. I then had a child and went on maternity leave. So I didn't quite start until September of 2021. And from September until around March, myself, Sean, Joe, and Matt, we all kind of made the pitch to our corporate team about needing Max, IBM or Barron, or one of those. We said, look, if we're going to make these weather graphics and if we're going to put out daily forecasts, we need the equipment. I mean, we just went for it. We didn't know what was going to happen and how they were going to take it. And I think Joe was slightly skeptical whether or not they were actually going to comply, but they did. And our company, I think saw the value in having meteorology on the digital platform with Lee. And so we signed on then with IBM, and so we all have our own Max boxes and in each property, and then I just went ahead and decided to do a green screen as well. Sean has one in Richmond. Sean actually has a really nice setup in Richmond, Virginia, a lot better than mine. But I worked with my chief photographer at the Tulsa World, and we set up a green screen and then just used OBS to key it out. And I mean, we were on the phone with Max, and we have a guy on our team here with Lee who is just an OBS guru. I mean, he's just fantastic. Bryce helped me work through that, and so we put up a green screen. So this is the best part. When we were setting all this up and we got all the equipment, I was going through it and I was like, man, where's my clicker? I need a clicker to do this, right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm called IBM and I'm like, hey, I didn't get a clicker whenever you mailed all the stuff over here. They're like, oh, you didn't sign up for clickers. I was like, oh. I was like, well, can James. I was like, well, can we get a clicker? And they were like, well, sure, but it costs money. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, how much can a clicker? Clickers, it's a little pricey. It's a little pricey. Anyone want to take a guess on a clicker?
Come by and pick one up. I've got a few.
Yeah, James, you said $3,000.
Clickers for everyone.
So we could.
The box is just $500. The clicker is $25,000.
Yeah.
So we didn't get a clicker. I ended up going and getting a PowerPoint presentation thing for like $10 off Amazon, and that's what I used. But that's my setup, and I'll do that from the office. I would say it depends on the week. Right? I have 2 little kids, so it depends whether or not they're in school, and I do things from home, on the days they're home or whatever. It kind of depends. Maybe 4 to 5 times a week, I'll head over to the station and do that, or to the building and do that downtown. But that's our setup in Tulsa, and it's been a blast here. I'll tell you, I put out daily forecasts like Sean and Joe and Matt do as well, and then I have 2 columns a week, and those columns really dive more into science related topics, from anything like what's the name, or why does rain smell? So petrichor, we talked about that. Why does rain smell? What is that? Why does it happen? To just, things about how wind forms. And so I have 2 columns a week where I do that on Wednesdays, and then I do Q&As from readers on Sundays. So that's what we have going on at the Tulsa World.
I would imagine the response from the audience has been really positive. John, comment on that from all of the newspapers and other properties that you guys are involved with.
I think for each one of us, the 4 of us, there's a slightly different expectation. There's a slightly different audience. I mean, Joe, for example, he's the only voice there that's exclusively to South Jersey. So he's built a very good reputation there. I'm here in Richmond, and there's already 3 network affiliated stations, right? So we're kind of introducing this concept to the public, right? They're so used to it's just television. Whereas, I'm trying to think the long term here, knowing that there is growth in digital. My kids are 23 and 19. And we know kids don't watch the news, but they don't watch any television. Everything is streaming. So for me, I'm thinking longer term here. I'm doing these quickie videos. They don't get a lot of response right now when the weather is quiet. Where we've seen success, not surprisingly, is when we're in a high impact weather situation, right? So we had a situation a month or 2 ago where we had storms fire up in DC and pretty much just race right down I-95 through Fredericksburg and into Richmond. And these had downburst winds running about 75, 80 miles an hour. And I was able to, just kind of follow it along. And I told my editor, I'm like, we need to live stream this because it came through between 3 and 3:45 in the afternoon, and this is a time where people aren't really at home very much or near a television. I'm like, this is where we need to be. And basically, I hesitate to say wall to wall because I wasn't at a wall. I have the same background here now, except I had OBS, and I was able to take the Max box full, and just kind of, it was me. And, whatever I can get off of Twitter, off NWS chat, through my window, which is right out here. And I walked everybody through the storm in the 45 minutes that entered the northern part of the metropolitan area and exited through the southern part of the metropolitan area, and just walked everybody through it in real time as it moved across the city. And there was tremendous amounts of wind damage right in downtown and a couple other parts of town as well. And I think that's where we need to start building trust, building visibility, and then people can start to come to the more regular videos. Because by design, I want them to be different than traditional broadcast. It's 60, 75 seconds, off you go, with not an awful lot of explanation. It's kind of like, this is what you can expect to plan your day. Boom. It's going to play out this way. This is what you need to know. And oh, by the way, the weekend's going to be fine. Off you go. So trying to do it a little bit different. It is a process, to be sure. But that's kind of how we're doing it here, and where we started to see some early success.
It's really neat that you're not trying to shoehorn TV weather onto a different platform, because that wouldn't work. People have tried this before, and it's just neat. You're exploring the strength of your tools and ability there, and it's really cool. I love watching Kirsten's stuff.
Yeah, it's good. And I'm having a blast because at this point in my career, to have as much creative freedom as I'm getting, my editor, most of the time, I tell him what I want to do. He's like, yep, that's good. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, that's fine. 2-3 days later, I'm thinking about this. Oh yeah, go ahead. Wow. Wow.
Just wait till the consultants get there, Sean.
Well, here's the thing. I did a preemptive strike. I introduced my regional news director to Tim Heller. So I said, if you're going to hire a consultant, this is the person you need to talk to. So if I'm going to have a consultant, I want it to be Tim, because Tim, of course, I'm sure a friend of the podcast. He's been on the podcast.
Yeah, we just had him a few weeks ago. He's a great guy.
And, and he's all about now and the future and digital and understanding, apps aren't going anywhere. Where do we find our value? Walking people through high impact, rapidly changing weather, because we know the apps do not do that well. in San Diego, where weather doesn't change very much, the apps are most of the time fine. But that's where our value is, and as they say in this day and age, is to walk people through when it's really bad, and then they come back to us on a more regular basis later.
I was walking through the Atlanta airport, I think, and someone was looking at their phone early morning when I was going to Pittsburgh, and somebody said, "Well, let me check the app and see what the weather's going to be." And I thought, I got to listen to the rest of this conversation. And they finally admitted to each other, well, this is obviously not going to be the what happens. And I thought, well, how much stock do people put in it? I see them grab them all the time, and it just like drives me crazy. But you guys started. I want to go to the podcast. I want to come back and talk about y'all's journeys to get where you are. But obviously, you caught our attention. You guys have got a podcast because we've been doing this for 16 years, and we're always excited when there are new podcasts out there. Who wants to take a stab at talking about the place y'all are trying to stake out with your show? Because Joe, you're how many episodes in now? 19, 20 roughly? How many?
Yeah, we're about 20 episodes. Yeah.
Now, so talk about frequency and those sort of things. And then I'd love to hear, a little inside baseball, if you can share it, about how you produce it and things like that.
Yeah, sure. We put it out every Monday. So we actually just dropped a new episode today talking about extreme flooding and climate change. So that was actually with Matt Hollander and I. We tag teamed on that with Dr. Rosamar Rios Berrios. And she was great. She's part of Science Moms too. But, we're looking to, have this for a general audience for our weather podcast. Typically what we're doing is the four of us are, we've had no problem finding guests. So, 1 week or another, we're recording. We usually record on Thursday for that following Monday. We do it on Zoom, kind of like this, but it's audio only. And we have a great team over in Madison, Wisconsin, who's taking care of the editing and making sure it gets to all the right places and goes on all, 70 something of our websites across the country. So, we have a built-in network of people who are interested across the country just by going to those websites. And then, of course, whatever you're finding on your podcast apps as well. But, I think we've touched on a number of topics so far. We try to keep it, relevant to the season when we can. We'll be talking more about hurricanes as we get into September and October. But, we really like to have at least 3 or 4 of us on to talk. Last week was kind of the exception. We had only Matt and I, but, at least 3 of the 4 of us. I mean, we kind of just go around and we each ask questions and have a conversation. I mean, something, I think, we try to do well is storytelling. I mean, working at a newspaper, storytelling such a key part of what we're doing. I mean, really any journalism, but I feel like at a newspaper, we're really trying to drive that home. So, we try to replicate that process, and 20 episodes deep and we're rolling. So, we're happy with where we're at, and we're always looking for more growth, but the Across the Sky podcast is been really good for us.
Yeah, well, we run into vacations and things too, but with a set of 8 panelists, we can generally get a quorum most of the time, can't we, Troy Kimmel? Troy, You're on mute there. Sorry, I missed that. Oh, he's on permanent mute. James,
nope, I
James
cut it off
muted
for a second. There was a bunch of noise going on here a few minutes ago. No, we figured it out. It happens.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, we also try to do some things like, we had one episode that we broke into 2. It was one long interview. We broke it into 2 just to carry us over a week. That was partially because of me and I was away. But we make it work. We make it work.
Yeah. So talk for a minute, Kirsten or Sean or Joe, jump in. Did you kind of study podcasts? And because I was at our film festival here in Birmingham this weekend, one of my favorite events. 3 days of movies, you just can't beat it. But there was actually a class on, teaching filmmakers how to podcast. And James Spann, I thought I should go to that because maybe we're not doing it right. Who knows whether we could have been doing this for 16 years and doing it wrong.
I know we're not doing it right. That's the nice thing, though. I mean, but we've never had any interest in developing an audience or competing with anybody or monetizing this thing. We're just having fun. Everybody that does this needs a creative outlet. We are so structured in terms of what I do and what, people that do what I do. I mean, in the morning, I get up at 4:00. I'm writing a blog post, do a video, go on television, 24 radio stations, 24, go speak to this school, go speak to that school. You come in, you got to do this, that, be on TV at 4. Everything is so structured, and everybody needs a little creative outlet where you can laugh. You can just sit back and just air it out if you need to air it out. And this has been like therapy for me. So this is basically a therapy show for weather people. And if you want to listen, that's fine. But I guarantee you, Bill, we are not doing this right.
No, that's probably true.
I thought Bill
that
I thought he was talking about, Bill, that all of us needed therapy.
That's also
that may
true.
be the case.
I think it is the case. I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, James, it was a great idea and a great name. When you first told us the name at first, I thought, that sounds a little weird, but it fits exactly what we do. Talk to great brains like the ones we have tonight. And so I want to let Jen talk for a minute because she wants to bring up something that I think we all would agree with.
Well, and you guys could chime in too, the importance of promoting your podcast on social media. When I hopped on here, 2 years now I've been on WeatherBrains. I talked to Bill about, are we promoting ourselves on social media? And it was really because it gotten very quiet. So I said, well, I'd like to help with that. And we've had a lot of engagement as we've hopped back on. We do Twitter and Facebook posts and just let folks know who's coming on the show and all that. We've had just a lot of engagement with that. And then once in a while, I'll throw some stuff out there about the newsletter that we do as well. And I think that helps. So, I mean, how does that help you all being able to engage on social media and use those platforms for promotions?
Yeah, I mean, social media, geez, I almost feel like that's 50% of my job. And, it's by choice. I mean, we have sponsors who sponsor through my social media pages. We drive post clicks and link clicks through, my social media pages. I mean, I have to say my biggest competitor here in South Jersey, primarily up until a year ago, ran his business through social media for weather. So that is the space that I compete in. So it's been huge for me. I mean, I'm putting out, about 9 posts on Facebook a day, and probably about the same for Twitter and Instagram too. I mean, I'm clicking on Instagram more than I'm clicking on Facebook. So it's about knowing different styles and seeing what we're doing. And, it's something that's brought in money, but also, as you build your own brand, you're helping the company's brand. And, at the Press of Atlantic City, we certainly welcome that, with open arms. And, yeah, I mean, I like it too. I mean, hey, listen, you're your own best advocate. So if you're not beating the drum, someone else might not do it as good as you. So, you want to make sure you're as visible in that space. I think just as a philosophical thing, I think a lot of things in life are, what have you done for me lately? So for better or for worse, I think that's where that comes in as well. But I'll turn it over to Sean or Kirsten as well.
No, I just real quick, because I know we want to toss it to James A over there. But one of the things that I like about this is because Joe, as you might guess, is a little younger than me. So
Don't
I'm
you see the
still
gray hair
trying.
on the side of my head, Sean?
I
You don't see the
know.
gray?
But I'm trying to learn how to be better at social media. I mean, I do. Okay. Everybody who's done weather media as doing social media, but there are other things that I'm learning from Joe at my age. Now that I've reached that point in my career, I'm over the hump, as it were, to try something new, but at the same time, be relevant and not too goofy. There's very few things a 52-year-old white dude can do on TikTok well, so I have to be very mindful of that. And that's just the way of the world, right? But there are other things I want to explore. My kids, again, 23 and 19, they're on Discord all the time, and half my office doesn't know what Discord is. And that's something I want to look into and see if I can, work to build more of an audience in time as well.
Let me encourage you, because I had no idea what Discord was, and because I'm not too far from you in age, just a couple of years. And I had no clue what it was. And we have a robust community now on Discord for Tornado Talk. And we just talk about tornado history, and we have different rooms. We can talk about other things, but we found a niche where they love talking about tornado history, and it's active every day. So it's a cool place. And Discord has changed from being the gamer chat to community. They've really changed their philosophy, especially after the pandemic, because everybody was on there. We couldn't go anywhere, so we were all talking on Discord, and they ran with it. So I would encourage you to reach out and get involved in that.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, so talk about that for a second, Jim. What challenges have y'all had? Anything there? Trolls, moderation? What did you run into?
Yes. I have a great group of moderators and administrators that stay on top of things, because we run a tight ship because we are a business. And so we do not run it as your free for all. There's a lot of rules on cursing, and if you're going to cite a tornado or you're going to put pictures and stuff like that, we have you put citations and copyright issues and stuff like that. So we do run a tight ship on those type of things. We do not bash the National Weather Service and all those type of things that people do for free for all in some of the other servers. If you want to do that, you can go to a different server. We don't do that here. And we have had issues with trolls and just some things like that. I don't want to go too deep into that, but we have had issues, and it's sad because before you even join the Tornado Talk server, you have to read the rules and say that you'll abide by them. And not everybody does that. So we have to make some decisions. And sometimes I'm called names in places, and people don't necessarily like the way that Tornado Talk acts or, our philosophies on things, but I really don't care. It's my server, and it's my guys who love doing what they're doing, and they all agree with the philosophies of Tornado Talk. And we want to have a place that's safe, where you can learn and you can grow. And we don't talk about politics. We do not talk about a lot of political type things or even current events. We talk about tornadoes. And then because that way we do not get steered into a direction where, people get their feelings hurt. We want them, if you want to go talk about politics, you can talk about that anywhere. But here it's a safe place, and we want you to learn. We want everyone to feel comfortable to ask questions and not feel like they're going to be ridiculed or anything like that, or called names and all that. We do have some no tolerance rules on some things. And I'm just really proud of my guys who moderate, because I couldn't do it without them. I really couldn't. I probably would have given up Discord a long time ago, but they keep it going for me.
It's like reading the comment section, right?
Yes, it is. It is. And it's going to be that way anyway. I've learned a lot in this process, and that it's, we just run things differently, and it's okay. There's a lot of businesses that are using Discords or other chat services, and they set things up the way that they want it to run. And it's distracting to start having other things thrown into the server. And then what you don't want to do is you have just a couple of people who are annoying, and they ruin it for everybody else. Because we have over 450 people on the server. And, not everybody interacts, but I know a lot of people sit back and just kind of watch how things are going, and they just want to learn and follow along with it. We do cover some live tornado coverage and stuff like that. And people just like to learn. And then maybe at some point they'll feel bold enough to start talking. And when they, because a lot of people have never been in this type of a environment before. And they certainly don't want to be in some place where they feel like they're being attacked.
What do they call that, James A? Lurking? Is that what? Is that
I think that's what those kids call it these days. I don't know. My question for you all is, Lee newspapers have a subscription model, right? So do you make exceptions for severe weather coverage? Do you bounce that out to the firewall? Can you do that? What kind of freedoms do you have to navigate around the firewall for non-subscribers, maybe on critical weather days?
Yeah, I'll take that one. There's, a couple things with that. I think, when it comes to severe weather coverage, there's multiple platforms that it goes out on. So we will put it out on our our website, but then it also goes out on our YouTube channel. It goes out on Twitter. It goes out on Facebook. So you can pick that up on any one of those platforms, which would mean obviously you could get it for free. The other thing too, and each property is just a little different with what they're doing. But at the Tulsa World, one thing that my editor and I decided to do, with the subscriptions and with trying to draw in a crowd with that is we decided to put the daily weather videos is actually something free, because we figure that you can get that anywhere. I mean, you could get it at, James, they could pick yours up just as easily. It doesn't cost anything. They can get it over at the other competitors in town, other TV competitors in town. And so our just weather videos are actually free, but when you want to start diving in deeper and learning more about whatever topic it might be that I'm diving into that week on that Wednesday or that Sunday or any day in between when something happens and I write an article or do a video about it, those things you have to start paying for. So we try to lure you in with the weather videos, but it was one thing that, like I said, my editor and I realized it was something that they could easily just again, James and I, we're in the same city, so we're both putting weather videos out on the internet each day, and so we didn't want to compete in that way. We wanted to try to draw people in with the more in-depth conversations. Oh, you're muted.
I was going to say, we don't fight in the streets with tridents, though, so it's all good.
James stabbed a man in the heart.
Well, this was no small investment, just having those boxes and all this equipment. That was a fairly we referenced it earlier, but that was a pretty substantial investment.
Yeah, it was. For the 4.25 years before Max, I was using PowerPoint. It was PowerPoint, drawing from pretty much free resources, and we also had a Pivotal Weather custom subscription, which cost about $1,200 a year, and that got us some maps with a couple of location names on it. But you took each, if you wanted to show us snow, a nor'easter coming up the coast, I'd have to go to Pivotal Weather, hit Control-C, copy that image, put it back into PowerPoint, expand it out so it fits the 16:9, and do that 6 times over. I like to call it the BC era for me over here at the Press of Atlantic City. But now that we all have Max, it's tremendous. We're able to, and we have Max Cloud. So like a graphic that, we did this today. Sean pulled a graphic from me. I pulled graphics from Sean for football forecast. Kirsten did a video for me on the Press of Atlantic City from Tulsa. We're trying, we're still in the crawling, stages of this with Max and us together, but, we're pretty darn close to walking, and Max really, is the key to a lot of this. So, we're really appreciative to Lee Enterprises and Paige Mudd, who's really overseen a lot of the weather aspect of this for making it happen. And, we're happy to be able to do this. Really, and they've been willing to work with us too. Max, through Max Velocity, their new website, that's going to be coming out, and then Max Cloud, and then just the regular Max products has really been, it's been a good partnership with Max. We're really happy to have them.
So whose idea was it to do the podcast? Someone in corporate or one of you?
It was someone in corporate. It's not like they told us, like, no, we don't want to do it. But no, we want to do it. We were down to do it. I do a podcast myself, Something in the Air podcast that we do that covers South Jersey weather. So I'll bring on, it's twice a month. The first Wednesday of the month, we bring on the state climatologist, Dave Robinson, to talk about the month that was. And then the third Wednesday of the month, I bring on another guest. So, for me, I've already had experience doing this for a number of years. And I think for all of us, it was just a natural fit. We've really never scrambled to have a podcast guest. We know so many people between the four of us that it does make it, it makes it easy to do. And we, we're all, know what we're talking about in terms of subject matter, or at least we know what questions to ask. So really, it's been just an extension of what we're doing in a way to, draw people to our website. There's a Gary Vaynerchuk, who's really a social media entrepreneur, had a book that said jab, 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 left hook. Well, that's what we're doing, giving out free content podcasts videos, but then, we want you to come and subscribe to our publication as well and see what we're writing about and see what we're talking about, beyond our 7-day forecast and the podcast that we're doing.
That's pretty cool. Kirsten, did I see, where is it you and Matt that went to the same high school? Is that, or did I make that connection correctly?
No, you're right. Troy, we're actually kind of from your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
San Antonio. Matt and I both grew up there. Didn't know him. I'm a little older than he is, but we both graduated from the same high school, and then he went to UT. But yeah. I went on. Yeah, I went on to Baylor. But yeah, it was funny. It was one of those things. It's just what a small world when you get on with a new company and it's someone that doesn't live anywhere near you, and you were both Reagan Rattlers, it's just a funny thing.
So Kirsten, I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, I forgot, Kirsten. How did you guys figure that out?
I think we were talking about where we were from, and
okay.
I think that's how it went about.
Yeah.
My claim to fame is I went to the same high school as Dr. John Knox, who will be here this week for UAB football. I'm looking forward to seeing him on Friday. One of my favorite folks. But Kirsten, you didn't start out in meteorology. You started out pre-med, right?
Oh, did I say that? Yeah, I just started out my freshman year. Yes, I did at Baylor because they didn't have a meteorology program. I enjoyed it, and what's the word? I was shadowed someone in high school, Jennifer Broom. Actually, I don't know if you know who she is. Great lady. I shadowed her in San Antonio when I was in high school. But then I went off to Baylor and they didn't have a meteorology program. And, you're like 18, 19 years old and you're like, I don't know what I want to do. So started off doing pre-med and then dropped it after my first semester. After my first biology class, I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And went on and did journalism and communications. And from there, I decided I wanted to, I knew I wanted to get, do the TV thing. And so I decided I wanted to get the meteorology degree. So started at Texas A&M for a year, but then transferred to San Antonio and went to Incarnate Word and studied under Alex Garcia at Incarnate Word and finished up my degree from there. And then Troy, you'll know these places. I worked in Victoria, Texas. That was my first job. I thought, man, I can't. That's the smallest of the small. You don't really get much smaller than that. So did Victoria, Texas, which was great, and then went on to Knoxville, Tennessee, Denver, Colorado, and then Tulsa, Oklahoma, and did TV actually at NBC, one of the competitors with James, for about 5 years in Tulsa. Freelanced for a bit in Oklahoma City, and then did this job. So. All over.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool transition to meteorology.
Yeah,
was there anything in your background that made you interested in weather that helped foster that, or what?
I think I'm one of the only meteorologists that will tell you there wasn't any kind of major event that made me want to be a meteorologist. It wasn't like
it makes you pretty unique, Kirsten.
Yeah, it does, I think, because most people, they've been through a terrible hurricane or some devastating tornado, and they thought, man, this is what I want to learn about. And in San Antonio, you don't really get much. You'll get, the remnants of a hurricane that come through. But honestly, Hurricane Harvey was probably the biggest thing that they've seen down there in South Texas at least in my lifespan. And that happened only 5 years ago? 5 years?
Yeah, 2017. We just gotten through the eclipse, and one of my hotels in Beeville, Texas, Metropolitan Victoria, was without a general manager, and the team was literally on the verge of walking out because this Category 4 hurricane, cruising up in there, and they didn't know what to expect. So they dispatched me quickly over there to calm down the ship, and so I arrived on that Thursday night, and just driving from San Antonio, watching these huge towers out over the Gulf, about 1 a.m. in the morning as I drove into Beeville was so awe-inspiring. But we had to get everybody on board with the mission. Hey, we're here to give people a safe place to go. And, we made it fine through the hurricane. And the next day they were like, Mr. Murray, get out. And I'm like, why? They were like, we need your room. People need your room. I'm like, oh, great. So I drove to San Antonio, spent the night because I had been there in 1979, the International Science Fair, and had loved that Palacio del Rio Hilton. It was such a fine hotel, and it's still there. So I had to go spend the night there just to relive those old memories before I flew back to Birmingham. But yeah, Hurricane Harvey was quite an event, and of course by that time we were turning our attention to Houston, and a forecast that had been on the table for about 24 hours that seemed improbable, but for some reason I really thought it was going to come true, and unfortunately it did. So, well, that's an interesting story. That's a good story, Kirsten, right there. Joe, talk to us about how you got into weather, because we always have to ask that. That's the obligatory question.
Hey, Joe, before you jump in,
Yeah.
I want to nominate Kirsten a weather event in San Antonio. How about that AMS ice storm? When was that, back in the 90s? That would be a great one.
You want me to talk about the AMS ice storm? Oh my God.
No,
Well,
that can be your big
can
weather
oh,
claim
my
it.
event.
next
Launch your
story. Oh
career.
yes, yeah. You know, I was born in 85, James.
Oh
So
boy.
I don't know that I remember that much.
Yep.
I remember it, James, and I couldn't believe it. I'm at San Antonio and the sun never came out for a week. It was so bizarre.
I'm presuming now is not a good time to say I was born in the 90s.
No, this is why you're going to teach me social media, Joe.
That's it. Barely made it though, that 91. So actually, like Kirsten, there's actually no one weather event that made me interested in the weather either. I will say one of the first things I can ever remember in my life, and I must have been 3 or 4 years old, was I was in my grandma's basement, and Al Roker was on WNBC, so local New York NBC. And I remember you're like my grandma or my aunt saying like, look, Joe, it's going to be you when you get older. I remember thinking to myself like, yeah, it is going to be me. So like, I don't know, it's just something that's just with you, or with me the whole time. But, growing up, I mean, I was born in 91. So I was, I remember some period of time before the internet, but admittedly not a lot. But I will say the first website I went on was weather.com in like 1999 or 1998. And I used to track hurricanes. I used to draw like the coast of Africa and Europe and the Caribbean islands. And I used to like plot my own hurricanes, like pretend I would, there was a hurricane coming to New Jersey, because at that time there was really nothing that came there. But I went to, so when I went to high school, actually, we had a meteorology class, which was great because I was like, this is going to be an easy A. I already know everything about the weather, but it was also bad because everyone knew that I liked the weather. So they wanted to cheat on me. So there was a little bit of back and forth in that, but it was good. But I ended up going to Rutgers University right here in New Jersey. Got my degree in meteorology there, was involved in our student broadcasting program, was actually the student manager of it. We had about 45 people by the time I left. And actually speaking of Max, when we were also doing PowerPoint there, and then my senior year, one of the faculty, me and 2 other people, we asked for Max. We made a proposal and they got Max. I never got to see it though. I was gone by the time it was in there, but, ended up after college working. It was like a temp to hire position at a local TV station, WM Mountain Broadcasting Company, BC, which is in the northern part of New Jersey. No weather, just reporting. And that was for about a month. Didn't work out. We kind of mutually parted ways, and all good. And then I actually started my first job was in weather consulting. I worked as a meteorologist for a company called WeatherWorks, which is based in the northwest corner of the state, working heavily in the snow and ice industry. We had clients like Wawa, which is the big convenience store chain around these parts. Which I think is going into Alabama now. Side note, but we had the New York Jets, the Philly Eagles, MetLife Stadium. So it was a mix of clients, and really. You'll learn a lot of weather there, because there it matters if it's drizzling, if we're accumulating rain, or if there's no rain for weather operations. So I learned a lot and learned how to really keep an eye on weather. A big part of it was calling people an hour before snow would accumulate. So you have to think about now, hey, not only is it going to snow, but when is it going to start accumulating snow, and talk to them about that. Worked also in radio and sales and social media for there. And that was my first job. My second job has been the press of Atlantic City. So, I transitioned from consulting primarily into media. And I've been here since. I do some side work as well for another news station outside of where we cover. But it's really been great being here at the Press of Atlantic City, and they were willing to take a chance on me, who had really, besides some radio experience, no formal media background. So I'm really thankful to Chris Worrell down in Virginia for making that possible. She's now down in Virginia. She was our executive editor at the time, for taking a chance on me. And I made a promise, if I do this, I'd, give it 110%, and, hope I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool story. You're the dean of the group, Sean. Tell us how you actually got into weather. I don't know that I've ever heard that story.
Well, I appreciate the title there. Joe really, I may be the dean, but Joe he really has more institutional knowledge of the organization. So I lean on Joe a lot as we try to put this thing together to understand where the pieces are going to fit. But yeah, I mean, I'm a Penn Stater. So I graduated in 91 when Joe was born. I then got my master's. I actually wrote code at Goddard Space Flight Center for like 8 months and got tired of that really fast. And then I did TV for 20 years down in Roanoke and Lynchburg. I mean, I got into weather. So I was the classical weather geek, watching the TV news in the 70s and 80s. Can't wait for the weather to get started. So, I asked Mom if I could get up from the table, go watch the weather segment at dinner, and begrudgingly, she finally got used to the idea of, yeah, you can go and then come back. So yeah, I mean, that's it for me, because growing up in Richmond, the 70s were actually kind of a cold decade, and we had a lot of snow here in the mid to late 70s. So you can go back and see pictures of me playing in the snow here in South Richmond. And I think 79 was one of the more classical storms we had here. So that, and hurricanes and thunderstorms. I tell the story this way, is that when I was getting to my early teens, I was always interested in looking up at the sky. And I didn't know if I wanted to go into astronomy or if I wanted to go into meteorology. And at that age, and I'm a first generation college kid. My parents didn't go to school, college. So I didn't have any idea how I'd make any money being an astronomer. Just didn't think to ask, because there's no internet in 1983. So I figured, well, these people on TV obviously are making a living. Maybe I can do that. And frankly, that's kind of how it got started, to be honest. And it just kind of took off from there.
Troy, you want to jump in?
I was going to say something here, because Sean and I've known each other for a long time and go way back, and probably it's kind of a really quiet job. Sean has helped me so much. We both sit on the AMS CBM exam review committee, and it's not really, it's a public job. Everybody knows it exists. We have the exam, but we have a committee which kind of operates in the background, just watching the CBM exam. And I've always appreciated Sean's support and everything that he's given. And Sean, you're still on the committee for a couple more years. So,
yes, sir.
So hang in there, buddy.
And I
thank you so much for your service, the AMS,
and everything that you have done, Troy, through all the, through the ice and what you had to deal with the freeze there in South Texas, and appreciate you sticking to it and working through everything as well. But yeah, I got on the AMS board of broadcast meteorology in, I guess, the late 90s, early aughts. And shout out to Robin Reed, who is the legacy CBS weather anchor here. I literally asked him, what do I need to do to get involved? And we were competing stations at the time. And he's 10, 15 years older than me. And he said, this is what you need to do. So, I always like to pay it forward, because people looked at me and said, well, there's something in you that's worthwhile. So I try to pay it forward where I can.
Yeah, John, talk for a minute about your time at Climate Central and what all was involved there.
Yeah, so I got out of the biz after about 20 years, wanted to make a little bit of a change, and went up to Princeton to work for about 6 years at Climate Central to learn a lot about climate science. Had a wonderful opportunity to meet a lot of scientists from across the country. And part of my job was kind of setting up some of the broadcast meteorologists with some of the tools that we had, mostly graphics, but some other interactives that we had on the website. So I had a chance to meet more meteorologists from across the country, lots of scientists from across the country. And it was a wonderful opportunity to do that and learn how to communicate complex topics in a way the best you can that's kind of non-invasive. You know, you as Catherine Hayhoe likes to say, you try to meet people where they are, see where you have common ground, common interests, and common goals. And that's how you kind of talk about a topic that, you know, some people still don't want to talk about, and that's okay. But, you know, you want to find a way to talk about it in a non-threatening manner, to talk about the seriousness of it without panicking people, because that's panicking people does no good. Then they just lock up, freeze, and nothing happens. So it's a challenge, and I learned a lot of strategies there. But in the end, I really missed being in the day-to-day weather, and I had the opportunity to come back. John Boyer, shout out to John Boyer, who kind of said, Sean, I'm leaving the Times-Dispatch. I think this would be a good fit for you. And he kind of started paving the way for this position here in Richmond. And he and Joe worked a lot before I came down there. But I mean, this is how I met Joe, working through Climate Central and the work we did with him there at the Press of AC. So it was a great experience at Climate Central. I learned so much, but it is wonderful. It really is wonderful to be home.
But, you know, Sean and Kirsten and Joe and Matt, I'm excited for y'all in this, what you're doing, because I think it's so unique, and it's, you know, 5, 6, and 10, 3 minutes, you know, that sort of stuff. It'll take forever for James Spann and myself to get over that, but you're breaking down the barriers in this, the new ways to communicate. And so I envy all of you for what you're doing.
that was one of the great things, is because there was so much creative freedom. And look, we've got a little room to fail. You know, if this doesn't work, let's try it this way. And that's the beautiful thing about the podcast. As y'all were saying before, we know how to do this. We're just going to do it. So, you know, I watched y'all. You know, Marshall Shepard does a fabulous job over there on Weather Geeks. So I'm like, I want to take a little bit of each of that and kind of merge it into something that's for broader audiences, maybe a little shorter than WeatherBrains, maybe a little longer than Weather Geeks, and try to build something that way.
Exactly what you mean by that, Sean. We hope.
Yeah, don't get Troy started here, Sean.
We'll be out by midnight. How about that? I mean, it's okay, James.
I'm on Eastern time. It's almost my bedtime.
You'll see the sun coming up soon, Sean.
But I think it's also interesting too. Something we hadn't really mentioned is taking this science that it is, which is so complicated. You know, it's not an easy academic experience. Taking something that's so complicated and trying to bring it down to earth and get people done. And that's what Matthew and the whole gang at the Washington Post have done.
Oh, yeah.
What y'all are doing. And I'm excited about that, because I've been told before by a couple of people, mainly consultants, which we won't start into here in television stuff. But I've been told people are really not interested in a lot of the stuff that goes on in the background. But you know what? They are. They love the weather. You know, and if you can take some time and do, like Kirsten is talking about, you know, you can tell them something maybe they didn't understand. They can understand things. Let's not sell them short. And I think that is what I admire y'all so much for doing. And you know, Matthew and everybody at the Capital Weather Gang and so forth.
You know,
I had
Troy,
a really
we're hiring.
I'm sorry, Kirsten. Go ahead.
I said we're hiring, Troy. If you want to put your resume in.
I don't know.
Yeah,
We are hiring. We're hiring a fifth person for our Western properties.
Oh, really?
So then we'll be a team of 5. But I had a really nice conversation with Jason at the Capital Weather Gang before I started this. You know, not that we're going to be competing and not so much synergy, but it is a very similar position. Obviously, he has a little more resources there than I'm going to have in Richmond. But, you know, they have been doing very good work, very strong work for a long time. So I try to learn or cobble together from other places that I see doing good work and try to lift up the enterprise from here.
Y'all talk about Matt for a second, because I thought it was interesting. He had some really high-powered internships coming through, because he he learned under you, Troy, right, at UT?
I know of Matt very well. Very bright young man. So,
And then he went on to Mississippi State.
right.
But I mean, he was doing internships at CNN, the Weather Channel, and
Oh yeah.
places like that. How was he getting those internships, and what message do we need to send to our up and coming students of how important that is?
It part of it is, and this is what I tell my students that, and I've mentioned it on this show before. I've been in academia now. I would never have expected this to have been the case, but for 35 years now. And one of the most important things that I think we have to do in academia is get people beyond the campus, because university campuses are not the real world. They are not the real world, unless maybe you're going into academia or something, but most people are not. And, the thing I remember about Matt so much is that Matt went out there, and I tell students, go out there when you get in your sophomore and your junior year, get out there and find ways to get in the real world, because guess what? You may find out, you get out there, you say, this sucks. I don't like this. And I'm going to turn and people do that. That's just human nature. But I just remember Matt going out there and getting it done. Just going out there and getting it done. He wasn't worried about, he was looking out for himself. And that's what I always admire so much about Matt.
You're talking, Troy, you're talking some about, having your students get out there. One thing that Baylor had that was, I thought, a great program that I actually did was, it was called Baylor Communications in New York. And they also had one in LA that came up a little bit later. But the whole point of it was to go off to New York for a semester, find an internship out there somewhere.
Yep.
And half of your credits were from that internship. And then the other 6 credits were from classes that we took. But I did that my senior year, and I worked at Good Morning America. And it was the best thing that I could have done. Just, experience wise. So I agree with you. Those kids going through school just get, and the one thing I will say though, I think from when I've graduated to now, getting internships though is definitely harder. I mean, they had a lot of unpaid internships that were going around, and now it's a little few and far between where you actually have at the Tulsa World. We had some over the summer, but man, at Channel 2 in Tulsa, we didn't have them very much for a long time, which is really a disservice to, and it's not just Channel 2, it's any of them, there were a lot. James, do you guys have interns? A lot?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we've just started phasing this back in after COVID. So, and it's tough here because we don't have a meteorology school within 100 miles. OU is the closest. So, come be an intern here over the summer, which is so incredibly boring. So, Troy, Tulsa summer may not be quite as boring as Austin, but it's probably close.
Well, I tell you the things I've been to Tulsa. I never forget the one time, James, that we, when was it, Span? AMS meeting on hydrometeorology in Tulsa. We go up there.
1983. 1983.
And the next week, Tulsa floods away. We haven't been invited back to Tulsa. They still don't want us to Tulsa.
No, never again.
Never again. The huge floods. But
remnants
James,
of Hurricane Tico.
Yeah. But James, so many great things about Tulsa, though. It is a great community. It really is. Heard so many good things.
So let me talk about your internship for a minute.
I want to talk about the future of this stuff here. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, I think we all have to realize here that for all of us, traditional broadcasters, those of you that are doing it right, professionals, and I love what you're doing. A lot of the TikTokers and the YouTubers, their audience makes our audience just look small as a peanut, and they're becoming the dominant way that people are getting some of their weather information. I mean, some of these people are gathering millions and millions and millions of views on TikTok and YouTube, and quite frankly, a lot of that content is absolutely horrible. It's fear porn. And nobody wants to share or watch a video when the weather's calm. Weather's going to be fine. Nobody's going to watch that. But boy, major hurricane possibly affecting the central Gulf Coast in 15 days. Watch this video to find out exclusively right here. And you
Yeah,
know,
and we can't get the forecast right for tomorrow, so we know 15 days.
And you guys know the deal. And I fight. And so what I deal with every day, is it true? All these private messages, dozens and dozens and dozens of them. Is it true? 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 With screenshots of the TikTokers and the YouTubes that have been forecasting a major hurricane on the central Gulf Coast on Labor Day weekend. And there's no accountability. And what's strange, when this stuff doesn't happen, people just don't seem to care. They just follow them with this religious type of zeal, and they become their superheroes. And if you come up against them and even suggest that it's wrong doing fear porn and posting deterministic output at 384 hours, then you're horrible. You're mainstream media. You ought to be banned. You ought to be murdered. You ought to be taken out. It's rough out there. So,
but let me, I want to ask Joe, though. I mean, because Joe's our TikToker, or, you know, knows more a little
hipster.
I'm a 90s guy, you know.
But he is. And so I kind of want to get, Joe, your view when you see this and see a 15-day GFS, which the model's been spinning up hurricanes for the last 3 months every day in the Gulf of Mexico. What's your thought on that? Because you're the younger generation.
I have a couple of thoughts. You know, it's an influencer economy, meaning that people who are on social media can make money off of it. And if my job was based strictly off of social media, I probably would be doing the same thing, because you're not making money posting about, hey, it's going to be calm and sunny tomorrow. But you need those people who are going to say that, because you don't need, you know, the people are going to hype all the time. See, those same people that are hyping all the time also have a personality that people are attracted to. So, you know, even if they know half in their mind, like, it's not going to be right, this, you know, this bogus cane, I think Bill just said bogus cane, you know, coming through, they just still want to be entertained.
Okay. But Joe, look, how as a meteorologist do you see that?
Well, so it's interesting. And I go back and forth with my head, because when I interned at News 12 New Jersey back in 2012, and I remember at that time, you know, the thing was, don't talk about any of that stuff. Really, don't talk about it. Don't hype. And even when I first started WeatherWorks, don't hype. Well, I'll tell you what, you know, I one of the meteorologists I know who's there, you know, now is almost, you know, tells me, you know, your job is to say, hey, I know people are posting this, but this is why it's not right. And I like morally struggle with that, because I agree. It's not like I agree with that premise, but then I also feel like there's going to be maybe, you know, if there's 40 other people who never saw any of that 15-day hurricane, now you're posting something or talking about it. Well, now those people, smidge in their head, might say, you know what? I know he's saying it's not going to happen, but like, at least there's a chance, isn't there? And then people get all crazy.
Yeah.
I think the way, you know, I don't know if I don't have a good answer for how to get past that. I mean, the one thing that Sean and I have worked heavily with now is working with some kind of seal with the AMS that might have to, you know, deal with that, might elevate the people who are working in the digital space. But, you know, I think we are in a time, we're in an influencer economy, we're in a personality driven economy, and we're in a time where people want to believe what they want to believe because they can find enough information to satisfy what they want. So, you know, I think that I don't know if this is any different than what's happening in journalism nowadays. I just think it's extended over to the weather space. The difference, I guess you could say, is that, you know, weather is a science, you know, so there's that. My thought is, you know, the way I'll say personality, social media style is to, you know, let's have some fun about the things that are actually happening and going to happen, you know, so like, you know, small thing, right? You know, yesterday, Atlantic City International Airport broke their daily rainfall record. Well, you know, I might drop a couple of goat emojis on there and be like, you know, ACY now is the goat for, you know, rainfall on Sunday. Like, why not have some fun that way, you know, and talk about something that did happen rather than talk about something that we know 15 days out is more than likely not going to happen. I also will say too, and then I'll turn it over to Sean and Kirsten, but, you know, specifically in this area, you know, a lot of people know that the Euro got Sandy right 7 days ahead of time and the GFS did it. And anytime, in this area, Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, there's posts about the euro, people take that seriously. And when they see the GFS, they're like, well, what does the euro say? So that's kind of a side thing, to the question, but I think it also kind of plays in the same space.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how complicated and complex we are as humans, because this anchoring bias that you're talking about, Joe, and with the euro too, we just seek out things that are confirming what our first inclination is. So if we see this deterministic cane in the Gulf, we're clearly going to continue going back to that. It's just what human beings do. And I don't know how to change that. We need Kim. She has all the answers.
Well, here's the deal. Look, I'm a big freedom of speech guy. I am all these TikTokers and YouTube guys. I would fight for their right to post a 384-hour deterministic Category 5 hurricane. I would fight for their right to do that. However, if you scare my people, and by my people, I mean my local market, you're going to have to deal with me. And, Big Ed's extreme weather face bag page and Uncle Joe's, extreme, it's all extreme weather. Everything's extreme weather face bag page. You get it here exclusively. Don't listen to the mainstream media. You scare my people, you got to deal with me. These people have no voice. They don't know what to believe. It's this ocean of information. They don't know what's true, what's not true. They have no earthly idea. And if people are scaring my people, I'm going to have to stop it. And I've got a big megaphone. I can do that. But I just have great concern over where this is going in 10 years and 20 years from now. Where do professionals fit in? Do you have to be some TikTok YouTube personality, where you're doing these cartoon fonts and you're doing these just outrageous forecasts that are, it's nonsense. There's got to be some way for professionals to keep doing their craft, present credible, level-headed information where people can make decisions on what they're going to do. People have stopped elective surgery because they saw some nitwit on Facebook posting a 384-hour hurricane map. They cancel vacations. They cancel family plans. And so I get really frustrated. And I sound like I'm cranky, because I probably am, because I've been dealing with this over Labor Day weekend for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I'm encouraged that I think all of you are professionals, you're level-headed, you're not going to do this, and you're going to do it in a way to create something new. And that's the other concern I have, is the next generation, that they want to do what I do. These Ron Burgundy newscasts, they're gone. Linear television, it's gone. Nobody's going to watch, something on CBS at 7:30 Central Time. The people don't do that anymore. And the news audiences are dwindling, and we got to reinvent this wheel. And I think part of what you're doing is part of that process. And I have firm belief that the next generation can do this, but we got to get to work on it. So anyway, I didn't mean
I echo that really, James. And that was part of the motivation for doing this, as that stuff is all exclusively online. And there do need to be more legit professionals doing online content to avoid all the scare tactics, right? Because we get them too. I haven't gotten them as much since I re-entered this sphere. And I do wonder if it's because I'm exclusively digital and not part of the dreaded mainstream media. Fair or not, that's been branded a certain way. Now, I do have a lot of interaction, especially when we get into wintertime. What about the euro? What about this? And I will said, the ensembles don't support this solution. This is what the ensembles are about, and this is why I use them. Off we go to the next thing. And I'll give a 1 or 2 sentences. This is why I'm not buying this. This is why I'm not buying this. You can go where you want, but this is my opinion. And, despite the Ron Burgundy aspect, James, Joe, Kirsten, Jen, Troy, all of us who do media, weather, no matter what the venue, have to develop a personal brand. And what are you going to be known for? What are you going to be known for in the long haul? Right. So that's why I'm saying what we're doing now is very much in its infancy. And my hope is that we are developing something that in the long haul is going to build further credibility to online weather presence in rapidly changing and developing situations. It is going to be a long slog. But, back to your point about weather communications, who knows who Hank Green is? Does anybody here know who Hank Green is? Joe,
Is he a YouTuber?
Hank Green?
Hank Green. Do you know
I
who
actually
Hank
don't
Green
know
is?
who that is.
All right. So Hank Green is this guy in Montana in his early 40s. All right. And he does science videos on TikTok, but he is legit. He is legit. My daughter, 23, said, Dad, you need to follow Hank Green. And I did. And I started watching, and he's very, ADHD, if you will. But he's just hitting scientific talk. And I watch him and he's right. He's right. He does it in a very high energy way, but he's right. He's doing it in a very different way for a very different generation. And he's covering all science topics. I've watched him do weather videos. I'm like, son of a gun, he's doing it right. He hasn't said anything wrong. So I'm trying to, I got on TikTok. I'm mostly kind of absorbing what I see out there. Who's doing what looks bad, what looks okay. Where's a place I don't want to put my feet? These kinds of things. It's very exploratory for me right now. All right. But I do think that that's kind of the job right now, is to somebody has to develop a legit online weather presence for real-time events, because there isn't a lot of that exclusively. I still love all my broadcast colleagues, but they're worn thin. Y'all know this. It's part of the reason I got out. All right. Because you got to do all these shows, and then you got to do OTT, and then you got to go do this, and then you got to do that. And it's burnout, and you can get burned out very easily. All right. So the opportunity to do a couple of shows when I want, they're 90 seconds. I drop them in, then I can go work on other things. It's great. It's great. But James, I absolutely hear your point, and I echo it. And that's what I'm hoping we can develop here, playing chess instead of checkers.
I just want to
All right,
chime
Joe,
in. Just
go.
Oh yeah, I'll just say real quick. The one thing that we, as in everybody in this Zoom, that the internet or social media, meteorologists don't have, is the ability for us to get out and go out in the communities every day. I don't see your internet, posting the guy who posts 384 hours out in the GFS. I don't see that same guy posting a picture of him at the local church, speaking to that group. I don't see them going out and doing, community work. I think and that's a similarity between what Sean, Kirsten, and I are doing, and Matt as well, with everyone who's working in television. We still, that's still a core part of what we're doing. And that, like anything, relationships are formed best when you're in person with each other and seeing each other. So, I make it a strong point to get out as much as possible and post about it as much as possible. People might think I'm just being, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-promotion, but it's really, it's self-promotion, but it's also to say, hey, we're here for you, and this is who I am. You don't see the social meteorologists doing that really. So that was my.
Yeah. And I've said this before. I think to really, really be successful, you in a specific a local market, and I'm still a local market guy, and that's my core job here. You have to understand the people, the culture, the geography, and the microclimate of the market that you serve. And it takes some time to do that. You can't be some guy in Walla Walla that's decided he's going to start showing, maps 20 days out and the outrageous stuff. There's no credibility there. And I think that's still important. And that's a great point. I'd love to, and I'm in a school every day. Every single day. Sometimes 2 schools a day. And that's my first open dates are in November of 2023. The demand has exploded. But on the way to these schools, I learn, even though I've been here forever, I still see things I've not seen before. When there are tornadoes flying, I can call out these places. I can see it in my mind. And there's no way a lot of the, TikTokers can do this. And I still think that's an important part of it. But again, we've got to reinvent this distribution model. You can get a gazillion eyeballs on these videos we do, but you got to monetize it and make money for our families. But anyway, having said that, Joe, I firmly believe in your generation. You're going to figure this out. It's going to be okay.
And James Spann also has been known to mention 1 or 2 very interesting establishments in central Alabama as well during that that said severe weather coverage occasionally.
But we talked about this. So you call out Wesley's booby trap. Everybody that lives in Bagley,
I had that
Dora,
on the bingo card. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Bagley, Dora, Summerton.
try that one, Joe.
Sipsey, Empire, they know where Wesley's Booby Trap is. I mean, that is the most famous landmark in that part of the world. And I didn't even think anything about it. I just call this stuff out. I mean, it's just,
No, you're right.
You're the have
best,
to understand the culture of the people where you serve. And again, that's why it's so hard to do this on a national platform. I admire Jim and Cantori and what they do at the Weather Channel, but man, it's hard to, I just still think there's going to be room for local people to do this. And again, something good's going to come out of it. I don't know what it is. So how many hours do all of you spend on social media? Just out of curiosity, run through a normal day. What's your day like? I love to ask this question because it is my biggest struggle is time management. It's not working for me. I'm sleeping 3 hours a night, which is not healthy. So go through a typical day.
I can start. My day is very broken. I have two small kiddos. One's 14 months and one is 3.5 years. And so I wake up in the morning sometimes at about, it depends, sometimes 4 a.m. if I'm working on a deadline because I have a story due. Otherwise, there's many times where I get to sleep in till 6:30 in the morning, which is huge because I did mornings for about 5 or 6 years. And so sleeping until 6:30 is a big deal. But for me, it's very broken. It's very much, I'll work 2 hours here. I'll take my kids to school. I'll come back and I'll work for about 3.5 hours, 4 hours here, go pick them up, come back, work another 2 hours. And then I'm still able to, put them to bed at night and get a full 7-8 hours of sleep, which, like I said, is just it was one huge thing about this job. Now, this is all barring severe weather, right? Severe weather, all of that goes out the door and you're there whenever you need to be. But this is just a typical day. That was one thing that was really enticing about this job, was the fact that I could make my own schedule whenever I wanted. So it really just depends. There's always the daily forecast that I'm recording. Whether it's in front of the green screen, downtown offices, or like I said, sometimes I just do it here from the house and, sit in my kitchen and have the background, and it's kind of a picture-in-picture thing with OBS. And then, like I said, I have those two big columns that run each week. So my Tuesdays and my Fridays are a little bit more jam-packed. And then we have our podcast on Thursdays. So.
And explain what OBS is for the people that don't use OBS.
Oh, it's a free software that I feel like, I don't know the best way to describe it. I feel like it does everything. I mean, it's what I use to key out my green screen, but OBS is, I don't know, Sean or Joe, how do you explain OBS?
Go ahead,
video
John.
software.
You want me to take a crack at it?
Yeah.
It's a streaming platform. It's a streaming open. It's a freeware software. So, it doesn't cost anything, but there's, it's a way for you to, for the people listening and watching, think of your TV channel, right? You got a banner at the bottom showing the headlines. You got maybe, the meteorologist on the big part of the screen, and you have a screen to the side with a looping radar or something like that. It allows you to create that kind of setup. So what all of us have is we have our box with our webcam, assuming we're working from home. Then we have our Max, which is our, the biggest box you'll see on the screen. And then we have an area for our social media, our weather sponsor, seal or your name. So it's a way to, but it's a way to stream. It's a way to record, and it's a way to push a video to a large number of places. If you are streaming, we do that in conjunction with some software that we have in-house that works with OBS natively.
And let me just say, I use an OBS type piece of software called Wirecast, which does the same thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of pricey, but it's for idiots like me, because OBS requires a Joe kind of guy here, hipster that's into all this stuff. What Wirecast is more of an OBS for dummies.
You saying I'm a hipster because I'm in New Jersey? Is that why?
Yeah, you're a hipster. I mean, you're a total hipster. I mean, anybody with hair like that's a hipster hairstyle.
That's it. All right.
But
I'll let everybody know.
Yeah. So anyway, but I just wanted to explain. And OBS is a great solution. And there's some young people that are, they're graduating. They have a degree in meteorology. They want to do what we've done, Sean, for years, and they have no interest in television, none. They don't see any relevance to their lives or their generation. And nobody wants to apply for these jobs anymore. And they want to do this on their own. And I would encourage them to do it on their own. But I'm just saying OBS is a great piece of software that doesn't cost anything. It's you know, and that will get you into some really cool production stuff. I think it's great. So I just wanted to be
I've
sure
even
that
been
we
able to
explain
learn
what that
it.
is.
So I mean, it can't be but so bad. I've learned it for the most part on my own with little help from Joe. You know, and I've just I'm in my office in my home. I went out and bought a microphone, and it doesn't sound bad, right? It doesn't sound bad. But back to Kirsten's point, the hours are great. I mean, look, we've done TV. We know what TV hours are. The hours are amazing. I mean, they are. As Kirsten said, when the weather's rapidly changing, all bets are off. But when the weather's fairly quiet, you know, it's 7:30 to 5. It's 8:30 to 6. It's this. I mean, come on. Never dreamed I'd have hours like this doing operational forecasting. But in terms of social media, it varies. You know, when we know there's weather, there's weather coming. You know, you do want to keep your community informed, and you'll do a couple hours in a day, right? But if the weather's quieter, you know, you're not spending as much time as maybe 20 or 30 minutes, depending. So it varies a lot. But yeah, so much, especially in the winter and hurricanes. That was the one thing I noticed when I was doing TV and started social media. That's when the numbers spike. That's when people are interested. Snowstorms, hurricanes, boom, boom. What about this? What about this? What about this? And yeah, you can't, it's whack-a-mole on some level. So at some point you have to back off for your own sanity.
Right.
But,
And mental health is, you know, we've talked about that a lot on this
Mhm.
show. It's draining when you're working, in my case, you know, from 4 a.m. to midnight every day. And since the show started, I've probably answered 20 direct messages, and I've got 20 more that need a response. And you're constantly, every minute of every day, trying to respond. I respond to everybody, unless it's a major tornado outbreak or snowstorm. I just can't do it. But in normal situations, I'll respond to these people. I'm honored they came to me. I really am. Out of all the weather people in the world, but it is wearing and could beat you down. And the other thing, it's the trolls. I don't know if you guys, I might be the only guy that deals with them, the haters and the trolls. And then it's just, that's brutal. And that'll crawl up in your head. And it's especially bad for women. And we've talked about it. We did a show on this, Bill Murray, that to this day, I'm still stunned over what I heard that night on that show, including one of my own employees here that works with me in this building. But anyway, so Joe, what's your day like, man? You're the last person that's yet to answer. Go.
Yeah. So, you know, I do try to give myself, like, let's say 6:30 to 9 a.m. just, you know, no work stuff, just maybe answering a couple of emails. But, you know, when I start, you know, the one, besides catching up on email and getting back to a couple people on Slack, I kind of have a little meeting with myself and thinking, like, and you're talking about social, you know, what can I put out on social media today? What's relevant to the weather story? So, for example, today, you know, we're in a drought. We had a rainfall record yesterday, but that rainfall record was really over that one little spot. So, you know, we talked a little bit about drought. We talked about, you know, a little bit of the rainfall. I posted out our podcast that came out. Today may not be the best example. Tomorrow we got rain coming, and then we have a really nice stretch with low dew points, you know, so I want to make sure the content I'm putting out on social is relevant to the weather story today, while at the same time, not giving away the 7-day forecast and not giving away, you know, what is actually happening in those high impact weather events, because those are the things that people are going to want to come to our website for. So, you know, I could say it's going to rain Tuesday night, but I'm not going to say when it's going to start or when it's going to stop. You know, that I'll share you a link to a weather column that's going to show that. So, you know, I have that discussion with myself. Then I'll usually start forecasting, you know, around that same time, work on our weather column for the day. That goes in print and online. And then I'll work on our videos with Max. But, you know, my day is so varied. I mean, you know, I have sales calls. I'm going out and doing events tomorrow. You know, I'm going to interview someone for a story that we're working on about extreme tidal flooding across the Jersey Shore. You know, it really can depend. I'm also our drone pilot for the company. So, you know, last week I went down to Cape May and, you know, took drone footage there. So it really does depend, James, on on the day. But, the couple things, is definitely a part of that day is the weather column, is my 2 videos a day. I also do a boat and beach forecast during the summer into September. And then, also making sure on social, am I putting out stuff that's relevant? Now, what I will do as well with social, and again, this goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, I want to make sure people know that I exist at almost all times, but I'm obviously not on at all times. I'll schedule stuff for weeks in advance. I got a story that I wrote that can live, for the season. Well, I'm going to share it out every Saturday between now and November, and, keep hitting that same base. Drone footage is great for that. I mean, it's seasonal. People can see that. So, I would say if I'm home all day, I'm probably spending about 2 hours on social media. If I'm not home, it's going to be less, obviously, but that's more or less how my day, is run.
Okay, well, cool, guys. We have to take a break here. I hope y'all can stay with us for a few more minutes.
Sure.
We've got to pause very quickly. And by the way, I love having podcasters on the show because the audio is so stinking good. I mean, a lot of times, we'll get guests on, and they just struggle with the audio, which that's just the way it is. But everybody's got really good audio in this show tonight. So let's pause very quickly. We're going to have Tony Rice. We had the launch scrub this morning down at the Cape. He'll have some more on that. We've got Jen, and this week in tornado history, we'll do some email, and we'll do picks of the week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
The Artemis 1 mission was scrubbed this morning near the beginning of the launch window. So what happened? The countdown clock started Saturday morning as preparations for launch began with filling the giant water tower there with 400,000 gallons to be dumped on the launch pad all in about 30 seconds. This provides protection not so much from the heat of the engines, but the sound, which would otherwise reflect back on the rocket, possibly shaking it apart. Sunday night, the first go-no-go look at the weather happened ahead of fueling the rocket with about 750,000 gallons of propellant. The answer was unfortunately no-go as a storm popped up south of the launch pad, and that provided enough concern about lightning until it moved out of the required 5 nautical mile range of the launch pad. Tanking ultimately began about an hour late, which is well within the tolerances of the schedule, as liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen started to flow. Now, this is a much longer and more involved process than simply pulling the family car up to the pump, so it takes a couple of hours. Lines must first be conditioned for that super cold fuel, nearly 300 degrees below zero for liquid oxygen and more than 400 below zero for liquid hydrogen. This is done by starting with just a little fuel, giving the pipes and connectors and those tanks a chance to chill down. The teams then switch to a slow fill and then ultimately at full pressure. As the team switched to that fast fill, sensors on the connector on the rocket indicated a possible liquid hydrogen leak. The problem was solved by slowing that flow again, and that brought both sides of the connector into some temperature equilibrium. That allowed them to switch back to fast fill without any further problems. A lot was learned during this test. Along the way, an interesting line of frost appeared along the orange-colored insulation that covers the core booster. That prompted some further investigation. They wanted to ensure that this didn't indicate a crack in the tank or other inner structure, which it didn't. It turned out just to be a valley in the insulation itself where frost had gathered, something we've seen before in the shuttle era. But this makes a lot of sense when you think about it. The rocket's essentially a big thermos filled with a super cold liquid and some insulation on the outside in a very humid environment. Next up, circulating that fuel through the engines to prepare them for launch, a process called engine bleed. Engines 1, 2, and 4, they did just fine, cooling down to acceptable temperatures. Engine 3 just didn't want to cooperate. Despite multiple attempts by the team to work through the problem, ultimately the launch had to be scrubbed just a few minutes into the window. This was also as dark clouds started moving in, dashing any hopes of utilizing the rest of that 2-hour window. So what's next? The next launch opportunity comes on Friday, 12:48 p.m. Middays tend to bring more unsettled weather, so all eyes will be on the 45th Weather Squadron and their next launch weather forecast. But for now, it all comes down to solving that engine bleed issue. So look for more from NASA in the coming days about which of those future launch opportunities they might select for the next attempt. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, on August 29th, 2021, major Hurricane Ida made landfall in southeastern Louisiana as a catastrophic Category 4. leaving immense destruction in its wake. The remnants of this weather system zipped to the northeast. And on September 1st, what was left of the storm combined with a frontal zone. This brought together the ingredients for a virtually unprecedented flooding event in northeastern United States history. 56 people died from Maryland to Connecticut. It also spawned 10 tornadoes that day, 4 of which were significant. One of our main writers, Nelson Tucker, did extensive research on the strongest of the outbreak, and the summary series is on our website, tornadotalk.com. This tornado moved from Mullica Hill to Deptford in New Jersey. Nelson had the opportunity to personally survey the aftermath and talk to those who lived through it. This was the first EF3 in New Jersey in 31 years and one of the strongest tropically spawned twisters of the past few decades. Per Nelson's personal analysis, the tornado tracked 12.84 miles and had a maximum width of just over 3/4 of a mile. 2 people were injured. There was a total of 563 structures with reported damage. Among the many places hit by this tornado, the Salvatore Drive subdivision was perhaps the most devastated. Of the 26 large 2-story homes, more than half were irreparably damaged, and none were left unscathed. Wellecrest Farms, the largest dairy farm in New Jersey, was hit. The Eaches family, who owned the farm, sought shelter in time, and when they emerged from their basement, they saw their farm in ruins. 2 of their massive grain silos had toppled over. Some barns were completely reduced to concrete, roofs ripped off others, equipment was demolished, uprooted trees crashed into the old farmhouse. Tragically, hundreds of cows became trapped under the shattered barns. At least 13 were killed and many more were injured. Explore this event more with our 3-part series on our website.
Okay, time to dig into the email inbox and leave things in there this week. Here we go.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All righty. So our friend Jim Lewis wrote an email and actually had 2 questions. And the first one we kind of touched upon already. He was asking about the long range model runs being thrown out on social media. So we hammered that one. But the second one I thought was a really good question that we could throw to everybody. He said, everyone on the panel is highly educated. So my question is, when getting your degree or degrees, what was your biggest challenge? Was there a specific class that gave a lot of trouble? Or was it really hard balancing work and school, or was there something else? I thought that was really, I'll start off. I struggled with physics big time. Took it 3 times. I just could not get through it. And so that, I think that just really set me up for the rest of my time. I was fine with math, but physics was just, I just could not get it. So anybody else want to throw in what was
my biggest problem was the work school thing, because I just had to work. I some know my background, I'm fatherless child, low income family, me and my mom with just not many resources, and I had to work, and that ain't easy. It's sometimes when you're in an intense, academic environment where you really need to focus on what you're trying to learn and studying, and then you're working late at night, working in the morning. I'm just saying that was my bugaboo. Troy, you had the same problem, didn't you?
Absolutely. Because I was doing weather while I was in school at Texas A&M undergraduate on TV. So it was, there are years in there that I don't remember that much about, that it's tough to do that.
Mine was differential equations. I mean, I got a little further along in the course each time I retook it. And by the 3rd time, it stuck deep enough where I actually made it through. But I still shudder when I see the big script L for the Laplace transform.
Yeah, I mean, to echo that, it's the the partial differential equations, but to Troy and James' part, I mean, same point. The first year or 2, it was very, very tight for me, to say the least. And I worked as well, and there were times where I wasn't sure I was going to be able to come back, but we found a way. So we pushed through. But yeah, I hear you. And then the mathematics were really tough to push through. I love the physics. The one part of physics that's always tripped me up is electromagnetism. The optics, quantum, even I'm okay with, and certainly kinematics. But for some reason, just B fields, I'm like, I always had trouble with that.
Yeah, it was the math for me too. We and I always did pretty good in math up until about early high school. And then I was a regular, B student. But, coming to Rutgers, I was actually placed into, I guess I tested into elementary algebra. And for all the people who, know meteorology, elementary algebra is not a good place to start when you're starting your meteorology career. So I had to work out of that. Fortunately, Rutgers had a program where if you take the final exam and pass it, you pass the course. So I did that. I passed elementary algebra, but I did have to, I started college at County College taking intermediate algebra just to get the pre-calc to start fall semester. So I was already kind of behind the 8 ball with that. And, I had some struggles with math, but I was fortunate to, dig out of it and, be able to really be on a normal pace. And, I had friends of mine who weren't as, we'll say fortunate, and I get it. Sometimes, you don't pass the class, but in weather, there's one section of one class. And if you don't hit the math by then, you got to wait till next year. So that was really the biggest thing for me. And I worked during college. I mean, I wasn't full-time or anything, but, I had a job and was making money too. So, it's always a balancing, but, I like working. I always enjoyed working. So, it wasn't so much of a hazard for me. It was something I enjoyed doing.
Math's hard for, well, not everybody, but math's hard, I think, for a lot of people. And it was definitely something I struggled with. But I had a teacher that actually encouraged me to tutor while I was in my math classes and tutor kids that were in classes below me. So, I was doing the Calc 2, 3, Diff EQ stuff, but then I was going and for 1 or 2 hours, couple nights a week, I would go and tutor kids that were in like algebra and stuff, because like that professor said, which is true, math is a language. And the more you can engulf yourself in it and continue to, speak it, so to say, the more it'll help you. And it did. I think that really helped me out a lot. So yeah, the math was hard for sure with me, but then also, meteorology was my second degree. So I felt like I was behind a lot of my peers who had already graduated and started off in television. So I got that job in Victoria, Texas, which was 2 hours away from Incarnate Word in San Antonio. And so I balanced that, where I was doing classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning, and then I drive to Victoria and I was reporting Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, doing the weather over the weekend and coming back and doing classes again. So it was a lot of work.
The sad thing now is if you put a differential equation in front of me right now, I would have no clue what to do with it because you don't use it. I haven't looked at and done anything like that in forever. I graduated in 1995 and I just haven't looked at it. I work in radio, so I just use my voice and just let everybody know how sunny it's going to be. So, but anyway, thank you everybody for sending your emails to us. Email at weatherbrains.com and get on our website too. And you can sign up for our weekly newsletter. You'll get the illustrious Bill Murray's article this week, along with his wonderful history and some astronomy stuff, recaps from the show and stuff that's coming up soon. And you can sign up for that and we'll send that right to your email box too. Back to you, Span.
Okay, so let's do Picks of the Week. This is where we go around the horn. Everybody has something that's cool, weather related. This can be a website. This can be hardware, weather instruments. It can be a book, anything remotely related to weather. And my pick, this was an interesting piece coming from the BBC. Hungary's weather chief sacked over wrong forecast. Did you guys see this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Rough times in Budapest, huh?
So apparently the government postponed this big Europe's biggest fireworks displays because of they cited extreme weather warnings, and the weather stayed calm, leading to the sackings of the head and deputy head. 2 guys were canned. 40,000 fireworks were ready to be launched from 240 points in central Budapest, display watched by 2 million people. The government postponed the event for a week because of the nasty weather that was forecast, but turned out to be a beautiful evening. And I don't know, sometimes you just miss them. All right, so let's go to Troy. Troy, what you got for us this week?
I need the button for the foghorn. That's what I need.
Ooh, I like that. Wow. Wow.
Next.
All right, Jen, go.
Oh, I'm going to be a proud mom, Tornado Talk mom again. I do want to just mention a new summary that we had come out today. And it's been neat with this one for several reasons, because I have a new writer, his name is Zach, and he's been writing and researching, and he decided to delve into a Colorado event because we didn't have any of those from Colorado on our website. So he chose August 10th, 1924 in Thurman. It was just an awful event, and it's actually the deadliest tornado ever in Colorado. 10 people died, all in one home. And Thomas Grzoulis gave it an F4 rating. And as we started digging into it, he did a lot of stuff on Ancestry and started putting stuff together. And he goes, I'm thinking that there may have been another fatality, which made the deadliest tornado in Colorado even deadlier. That everybody from the National Weather Service to Thomas Grzoulis and other sites all have the 10 fatalities. So we started digging a little bit more and actually found one article that confirmed the extra fatality. And so we sent everything to Thomas Grzoulis, and he confirmed that he got behind that. He goes, I think you have the evidence for that. And it's just amazing to me to work with these wonderful young people who have a heart for tornado history. And it's not about, always trying to, but what we want to try to do is tell these stories so people know, but we also want to get the history right. And we want to bring meaning to the folks whose lives were impacted. And so, for it was 3 Mennonite families that were in a home together, and one of the kids saw the tornado hit the house, and it killed his mom and 2 sisters, and it was just awful. And he was only 14. Such a tragic event, but then finding this extra fatality, we could give this woman's life meaning as well, and to honor their sacrifice, and we like to try to get the history right to the best of our ability. And so it was very momentous for us in several ways to be able to communicate with Grzoulis, who is my hero and the hero of many. And then also I talked to the National Weather Service today, and they were very receptive to, please send us what you have so we can review it. I talked to the Science and Operations Officer at Boulder. And so it was really great to talk to them too. So I have the link to the summary. It's a free summary on our site. It tells all the details about what happened. And so hopefully you guys get a lot out of that, and just we can pay the honor to those families.
Outstanding. And again, the links will be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. James A., I know you got to go on TV here soon. What's your pick of the week?
I am showing a slide from Joseph Trujillo Falcon's presentation at NWA, who is a rising star in where the entire weather enterprise is going. He's in that gray area between theory and practice. And the thrust of his was in the Paducah tornado. He interviewed a lot of Spanish first language speakers for his research project. And despite these incredibly good tornado warnings and awareness leading up to this event, this came down to an emergent and organic warning system with a parish priest using the church's WhatsApp to get the warning out to his parishioners. And it was just an example that, again, most of us on TV have changed our messaging a little bit during a tornado warning to ask people, yes, call somebody. If you know they're in the polygon, call them. Even if they get 3-4 phone calls, that's better than not getting a phone call.
Yeah, I forget which one of the social scientists told me that a few years ago, but they're right. You're missing your greatest resource. It's the people that can be an extension of what you're trying to do. You can't reach everybody, but that's a excellent, outstanding. And again, that'll be up on weatherbrains.com. You got a 9:00 show, don't you?
Yes, sir. The best.
Okay, so you take off when you got it. So I must be the only guy in the country that doesn't do a 9:00 show Central Time. It's just like I'm blessed.
I'm sure it's coming.
Oh yeah, it's probably coming. All right, so let's go. Let's see here. Let's go over to Kirsten here. Give us something good. Go.
Oh, me? You want me to give you something good? Oh,
yeah. See, all of you guests have to come up with something good here. Something really, really good related to weather.
Kirsten, you want to? I can do one now, Kirsten.
Yes.
And if you want to think about it, because I do have one.
Go for it.
Go, Sean. Give her some time.
The Levanter cloud at Gibraltar. The Royal Air Force posted that picture, the video, middle of last week of the orographic lift and the wind running into a big rock there at the Royal Air Force Base in Gibraltar with the downstream cloud, just very beautiful. So just if you go on Twitter and look up Royal Air Force Gibraltar, it's right there.
Yeah, that is too stinking cool. That's a great pick. All right, Joe, let's go to you. We'll come back to Kirsten here in a minute.
All right, so I got a picture up, and it's not the nicest looking picture, but it's been hot in the streets here along the Jersey Shore this weekend. No pun intended. It's the water temperature sensor in Atlantic City because we preliminarily set the all-time record warmest water temperature at Atlantic City on Thursday. We actually broke it 3 days in a row. We got up to 84.7, which is the all-time record. But there is a little bit of suspense because the National Ocean Service inspected it on Friday and has taken it offline because there may have been a faulty sensor. That being said, the National Weather Service in Mount Holly, we talked. They don't believe they believe the record's good. That it probably was faulty. It was faulty in the sensitivity of the measurements, not necessarily what the measurement was. So there's a little bit of to be continued on it. However, someone just texted me right before the show that said another place, Sea Isle City, which is about 20 miles south of Atlantic City, also broke their all-time record water temperature today. It was in a thoroughfare. I think it was like 87 something. So we are quite tropical here in New Jersey as we round out summer.
Bath water. All right,
those
Kirsten.
Alabama,
like Alabama.
Those numbers, James fan.
Yep. I think we're at what, 85 down there. All right, Kirsten, we've stalled long enough. Go.
I know. Sorry, I thought we were just listening as guests. I didn't. Joe, I went back.
That's
to
why
your
that
website.
10 o'clock call was important, Kirsten.
Sorry, I know.
Sorry, I didn't make it either.
No, Joe, you put something on your. I just went back and trolled your Facebook and everything because you put something up and I feel like you took it down because I can't find it. And it was almost this like rainbow looking lenticular cloud.
Yes.
And you took it down.
I didn't take it down. I think it was
it
was an Instagram
Mark
story. I think it
Zuckerberg
went
took
away.
it down.
Oh, it expired.
It expired.
My
but
husband sent me the same thing, and it was something that was getting some buzz because my husband, if something gets buzz in the sports world, then I hear about it in some way. So I guess somehow that made its way to me. But anyways, it looked like that, and I think you even said this on your Instagram story page, whatever it was, that it looks a little doctored, and I'm going to agree with you on that.
Yeah, I posted the link there. So, it was called a rainbow cloud. It was basically a rainbow that, if you're looking at me, kind of went around the cloud. So it's a type of lenticular cloud, and there was a rainbow on it. And I'm sure it happened. It just looked like, looked like Rainbow Road from Mario Kart, on there. So I don't, it looked too good to be true. It is awesome. But yeah. I think it happened. I just don't think it happened to the extent that the viral video made it sound like it was happening.
Where was it? Where do you remember?
In China.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, allegedly, and obviously somebody cranked up the saturation all the way, and a lot of this originates from TikTok, and they're and they're trying to get views and some of the influencer money, and I don't even comment on that stuff. I get that stuff all the time. So
I think it was shrimp boats in the Northern Pacific.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no.
So Joe, give us some TikTok tips for us squares. And the way I see the way I see, and I've said it on this show before, the people that are successful influencers and reach a lot of people on TikTok, they do one of three things: they dance, they cuss, or they're funny. And I'm not funny. I'm not much of a cusser, and I sure don't dance. So what's the secret to being good on TikTok other than those three things?
I mean, I think you nailed it there. Some tips I picked up along the way. Always put FYP as the hashtag. That drops it onto the search, like the regular search where it's not followers. So that's one thing I do. I also just like to keep it, if you're doing a bunch of there's also, let me back up, something called sound sync. So if you put a song on a number of pictures, it'll sync to the beat of the song. So it makes it a little more aesthetically pleasing. Other than that, that's all I got for you. Otherwise, I'm just dancing, cussing, and being funny on my way to TikTok stardom. So,
and I gotta say, Jen, have you noticed that I see another cat here in Joe's video? Do you see that, Joe?
Joe has introduced
That's
his cat.
right.
We do. I'm
Much more
surprised they
behaved
haven't
than
jumped
mine.
on front of the screen either, because they're very privy to doing that. But I guess they're on their best behavior tonight.
They
She's
are
saying
much
that.
better than mine.
That's
And the-
autumn.
Oh.
And there's
over
no
in the
doubt
background.
the show title for this episode is Cat Butts. So
Beautiful.
Sean, plug the podcast, plug everything you're doing, plug away. This is your plug-a-rama. Go.
All right. Again, we are Lee Enterprises. Our podcast is called Across the Sky. We fought very hard for that title, I will have you know. But we are all across the sky from soon coast to coast when we hire the next person from the West Coast. So across the sky, we should be coming up on our 20th episode. So we have a long way to go to catch up with all of you. I'm at the Richmond Times-Dispatch. That's at RTD News. And you can follow me just at Sean Sublett on Twitter, SeanSublette. Over on the face bag, as you like to call it, James Sean Sublett, comma, meteorologist. And on the IG and on the TikTok, just with the name Sean Sublett, because the name is so odd.
And that's a good name. All right, Kirsten, plug your social media. Go. What you got?
Okay, so for Twitter, I am Kirsten Lang, which is KirstenLangWX. That's Twitter. Facebook is just Kirsten Lang. And it's the photo that looks a little bit more professional because my personal one is also Kirsten Lang. And then Instagram. Oh, what's my Instagram? Kirsten Lang 1, I think is what it is. So I kept it pretty uniform across it all. Yeah.
All right, Joe, go.
Well, you can find me on TikTok at JoeMartWX, JoeMartWX. But that's also where you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. And then my Twitter page is at AC Press, so Press of Atlantic City, AC Press Martucci, MARTUCCI.
All right. Well, awesome. This was a fun show here, and we got to wrap this sucker up. Our 2-hour window is closing. But listen, if you want to get in touch with us, the email address here, it's email@weatherbrains.com. For those that are new here, we typically do this show Monday nights. The video version goes live at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central on the WeatherBrains YouTube channel. But we know that most of you listen to this show. And if you watch, listen, whatever, thanks a lot for doing that. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend. God bless.
And thanks to Chris White for suggesting this great
Amen.
group of guests tonight.
Big shout out to Chris.
Y'all tell